Maybe if your parties weren't so pathetic, someone might actually care to show up. My mother sneered once, lips curling like she had tasted something sour. Those words still echo like broken glass in my chest. A child's laughter replaced by silence. A birthday banner hanging limp, waiting for joy that never arrived. Hi everyone, my name is Aurelia Voss, and I measure betrayal by the sound of empty rooms. I didn't plan extravagance, I planned love. Cupcakes stacked high, each frosted swirl hiding a candle. Paper lanterns glowing like soft moons above our little living room. My daughter, Ilara, turned 10 that day. She wore a yellow dress that shimmered with hope. She sat by the door at 4 o'clock. By 4:15, her shoulders sagged. By 5, she stopped asking, "Do you think Nana and Pop are close?" Her small hands folded into her lap, brave as a soldier. "It's okay, Mom. We can celebrate just us." So we did. We spun circles on the hardwood, pretending our shadows were party guests. We laughed with the volume of people we wished were there. Each giggle was defiance. Each stomp of her little feet was a heartbeat saying, "We are enough." 1 week later, my phone buzzed. A group text from my mother. No apology, no mention of the birthday she had missed. Just a flyer. A sweet 16. My niece's sweet 16, $35 per person. Venmo me. A price tag in place of love. A digital slap in the face. I sent her $1. Memo, congratulations. Then I changed the locks. I blocked their numbers. For the first time in years, my boundaries clicked shut as firmly as the door. Ilara helped me feed the leftover cupcakes to the crows. "Do you think Nana will be mad?" she asked, her voice small but steady. I kissed her temple. Being mad is easy. Being kind is harder. We choose harder. 2 days later, at 6:12 p.m., the knock came. Not frantic, not angry, measured. 3 thuds against my brand new lock. Through the peephole, navy uniforms, steel badges catching the hallway light. Radios hissed softly at their shoulders. Ilara froze mid-coloring. A blue crayon rolled from her hand, spinning until it stopped against the leg of the table. I stood in silence, my heart beat louder than the sirens flashing faintly outside, red and blue bleeding across the birthday banner still taped to the wall. I took one breath, unlatched the chain, and turned the knob. The door opened with a reluctant groan, and the world outside stepped in wearing authority. 2 officers. One older, his jaw set like stone, the other younger, eyes flicking nervously between me and the clipboard in his hand. Behind them, the hallway lights hummed, making the scene feel like a stage I hadn't auditioned for. The older officer said, voice clipped but polite, "We received a call of concern. We need to ask you a few questions." Ilara gripped my leg, her small fingers pressing crescents into my jeans. I smoothed her hair, even as my stomach tightened into a knot. "What kind of concern?" I asked. The younger one glanced down at the paper. A report of neglect. Claims that the child inside this residence may be unsafe. His voice faltered, as if he already doubted the words. For a moment, silence bloomed. Only the faint buzz of the hallway light filled the air. Neglect. Unsafe. Words sharp enough to slit open years of wounds. I thought of the empty chairs at my daughter's birthday, of the family who chose silence over showing up, and now chose weapons disguised as words. "Would you like to come in?" I asked, my voice steady though my heart raced. If I had learned anything, it was this: fear only feeds their story. Truth must stand calm. The officers stepped inside. Their eyes scanned the room, the cupcakes still stacked neatly in Tupperware on the counter, the art supplies scattered across the rug, the banner that read "Happy Birthday" still taped to the wall, curling at the edges. Ilara's drawing lay half-finished, 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. The younger officer's shoulders softened. He crouched down to Ilara's height. "Hey there, kiddo. What's your name?" "Ilara," she whispered. "And how old are you, Ilara?" Her chin lifted with the quiet pride of 10 years. "I just had a birthday. Mom made cupcakes. Want one?" The offer hung in the air like a truth too pure to deny. The older officer's jaw unclenched. He exchanged a look with his partner, something between relief and guilt. But the damage had been done, the accusation planted, the betrayal confirmed. This was no accident. This was my mother's hand, reaching through strangers' voices to claw at my door. And for the first time, I realized, this wasn't just cruelty. This was war. The officers didn't stay long. They asked the questions they had to, about school, meals, doctor visits. Each answer stacked like a brick in the wall of proof that my daughter was safe, loved, cared for. Ilara led them to the fridge herself, pulling it open to reveal shelves lined with leftovers and fruit cups, a birthday cake box still half full. "See," she said, small hands tugging the door wide. "Mom always makes sure." The younger officer smiled despite himself. The older one only nodded, jotting notes on his clipboard. When they finally left, their boots echoed down the hall, a sound that should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like thunder before a storm. I closed the door. Ilara looked up at me, eyes wide, voice tiny. Why would Nana call the police? I knelt, tucking her hair behind her ear. The truth scraped my throat raw. Because some people don't know how to love gently. They only know how to hurt loudly. Her lip trembled, but she nodded as though she understood more than a 10-year-old should. She went back to her cranes. I stood there, hands still on the knob, every muscle tight as wire. My mother hadn't just missed a birthday. She hadn't just mocked me. She had tried to brand me unfit, to turn strangers with badges into weapons. And in that moment, something inside me hardened into steel. I blocked her for peace. She chose war. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the light dim, Ilara asleep in her room. I scrolled back through years of messages, every snide remark, every guilt-drenched manipulation, every time she made me feel small just for breathing. Patterns emerged like bruises under skin, silence as punishment, love as ransom, control disguised as concern. My phone buzzed. A new number. The text read, "You brought this on yourself. If you just listened, none of this would have happened." No name. No signature. But I didn't need one. My mother's fingerprints were all over the words. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred in the glass. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Ilara growing up knowing her worth, or inheriting the same chains I had dragged for years. I made a promise, whispered into the quiet. I will never let you break her, the way you tried to break me. And in that vow, the seed of revenge began to root. Revenge doesn't start with fire. It starts with silence. The kind of silence that sharpens you. I didn't storm to her door. I didn't scream into the phone. I sat with the truth until it lost its sting and turned into focus. My mother had built a reputation in town, church luncheons, charity raffles, the smiling matriarch with pearls around her throat. People believed in that mask. They always had. And that was her power. But masks crack under light. I started with the police report. Officers may have left satisfied, but paperwork lives longer than conversations. I requested the record of the call. They couldn't give me everything, but what I held in my hands was enough. The time, the phrasing, the anonymous concern. It was her. I knew it the way you know your own handwriting. Next, I gathered proof of the opposite. Ilara's perfect school attendance, the pediatrician's glowing reports, photos of our home, her bright drawings taped across the fridge. Evidence not just of survival, but of love. Then, I turned to her world. I knew her patterns. Every Sunday, she bragged about family values at church. Every Wednesday, she posted inspirational quotes on Facebook about forgiveness and grace. And yet, behind closed doors, she weaponized shame. I didn't need to invent lies. I only needed to hold up a mirror. So I built a folder, a quiet, meticulous archive of her cruelty. Screenshots of her messages. Voicemails with barbed words. The Sweet 16 invite where she demanded money but offered no apology. Even the officer's note about the false claim. Truth, lined up like dominoes. I wasn't going to send it yet. Timing mattered. In the meantime, I lived. I took Ilara to the park. We baked muffins together, her laughter sticking to the walls like wallpaper. Every smile she gave me reminded me of what was at stake. My revenge wasn't rage. It was protection. It was showing my daughter that silence could be broken without becoming cruel yourself. And still, at night, I heard echoes, my mother's laughter, her voice dripping venom. Maybe if your parties weren't so pathetic. Each echo reminded me, she had drawn first blood. And when I finally struck, it wouldn't be with shouting. It would be with precision. Because the most devastating revenge against someone who lives for appearances is truth set free in the light. The invitation came like clockwork. Sunday brunch at the church hall, my mother's kingdom. Lace tablecloths, silver pitchers of lemonade, her laughter ringing above the crowd like bells. She thrived there, cloaked in her performance of grace. That was the stage I chose. Ilara and I arrived quietly. She clutched my hand, eyes wide at the bustle of voices and clinking cutlery. I bent low, whispering, "We're just here to sit. Watch me, and if you get scared, squeeze my hand." She nodded, brave as ever. At the front, my mother floated in pearls, greeting guests with kisses, pouring tea like holy water. She didn't see me slip into the back corner, a folder in my lap, heavy with years of truth. Halfway through, the pastor invited Sister Marianne to share words on family. Of course she did. She rose, hands clasped, face lifted with practiced humility. "Family," she began, voice honeyed, "is the greatest blessing. We must always protect the little ones, nurture them, guide them." I felt Ilara squeeze my hand. She recognized the lie, too. When the applause started, I stood. Calm. Steady. My chair scraping against the floor cut through the noise like a blade. Heads turned. My mother froze mid-smile, eyes narrowing as recognition dawned. I held up the folder. "Since we're speaking about family," I said, my voice low but carrying, "perhaps the truth deserves a seat at the table." The room hushed. I laid the papers on the nearest table, screenshots, printed texts, the police report. Guests leaned forward, eyes catching words that blistered against the pearl-white setting: neglect, false report, pay to attend Suite 16. Gasps rippled. The mask began to crack. My mother reached for words, but they stumbled, tripping over each other like drunks in the dark. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply stood there with my daughter's hand in mine, truth laid bare like bread broken in communion. And for the first time, the room saw her not as the saint in pearls, but as the architect of cruelty. The silence that followed was heavier than any sermon. Eyes darted between the papers and my mother, searching for a crack in her perfect mask. She laughed first, a brittle, high-pitched sound. "This is absurd," she said, waving her hand as though shooing away flies. "My daughter is unstable. She's twisting things, making me look cruel. You all know me." But the room didn't nod. They didn't laugh with her. They leaned closer to the table where the papers lay, reading the words she thought would never see daylight. One woman, Mrs. Carter, who had sat beside my mother in pews for 20 years, whispered too loudly, "That's her number on the police report." Another man frowned, pointing at a screenshot, "You brought this on yourself." The weight of recognition spread like ink in water. My mother's smile wavered, then collapsed. She reached for the folder, but I stepped forward, placing my hand over it. Calm. Firm. "You tried to make the world believe I was unfit to raise my child," I said. "But this," I tapped the evidence, "is who you are." Her cheeks flushed crimson. "How dare you humiliate me here?" she hissed, voice low but venomous. "Humiliation isn't my doing," I answered softly. "Truth doesn't humiliate. It only reveals." Gasps, murmurs, a shifting of chairs, the sound of a community rewriting its story of who she was. I didn't stay for the fallout. I didn't need to. Ilara and I walked out together, sunlight spilling over us as the door closed behind. My daughter looked up, eyes wide but steady. "You weren't scared at all," she whispered. I smiled, though my hands still trembled. Of course I was. But sometimes courage just means standing still when you want to run. And in that moment, I knew, her power was gone. Not because I shouted her down, but because I refused to carry her silence anymore. Behind us, her empire of pearls had begun to crumble. The storm didn't die quietly. Within days, my phone buzzed with numbers I didn't recognize: cousins, distant relatives, people who hadn't spoken to me in years. Some hurled accusations: "How could you do this to your own mother?" Others whispered apologies, admitting they had seen cracks but never dared to name them. My mother, of course, didn't stop. She sent letters, handwritten, dramatic, dripping with self-pity. One read, "You've ruined me. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. Are you proud?" Another, "One day, Ilara will hate you for destroying her family." I didn't reply. Silence had become my armor. But the community shifted. Invitations that once flowed toward her dried up. She no longer stood at the front pew, she sat alone, shoulders hunched, pearls absent. The woman who had lived for appearances found herself invisible. And invisibility, to her, was worse than death. Ilara noticed, too. One evening, as we walked home with groceries, she asked, "Will Nana ever be nice again?" I paused, the bags heavy in my hands. "Maybe," I said carefully. "But sometimes people choose anger over love. And when they do, the kindest thing we can do is let them." She nodded slowly, as though filing that truth beside the others she had gathered too young. At night, when the house was quiet, I thought of my mother, not with rage, but with a strange, heavy pity. She had tried to break me, but all she broke was her own reflection. And yet, I knew she wasn't finished. People like her don't surrender. They claw, they grasp, they lash out, even when their hands are empty. So I waited. Not in fear. But in readiness. Because the final act wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about closing the door so firmly that even echoes couldn't creep through. And when that moment came, I would choose my ending. It came quietly, like the last ember burning out. 2 weeks after the church incident, a final letter arrived. No dramatic handwriting this time, no venom dripping from the page. Just 3 sentences, scrawled in shaky ink. "You think you've won. But without me, you'll have nothing. One day, you'll regret this." I folded it once. Then twice. Then dropped it into the trash without a word. That was the difference between us. She lived for witnesses, for grand gestures and audiences. I no longer needed an audience. My daughter was enough. My peace was enough. The locks on my door stayed changed. The numbers on my phone stayed blocked. The space she once occupied in my chest, the endless ache of trying to be loved by someone incapable of it, finally felt empty. Not the hollow kind of empty. The free kind. Ilara and I made new traditions. Saturday pancakes with too much syrup. Movie nights on a blanket fort. Birthdays with chairs filled not by obligation but by choice. Neighbors, friends, people who showed up because love, to them, wasn't currency. One evening, Ilara curled beside me, her head on my shoulder. "Do you think Nana will ever come back?" she asked softly. I kissed her hair, breathing in the scent of cranes and sugar. "Maybe. But if she does, it will be on our terms. And if she doesn't," I paused, letting the weight of truth settle, "we are still whole." Her little arms wrapped around me, as if sealing the promise. Poetic justice hadn't come with sirens or shouting. It had come with silence, with truth, with the refusal to let cruelty dictate the story anymore. My mother's empire of appearances had collapsed under the weight of her own choices. And me? I stood taller in the ruins, holding my daughter's hand, knowing the war was over, because I chose not to keep fighting it. The greatest revenge was never destruction. It was living free.